Okay. Sadashiva Samarambham Shankaracharya Madhyamam Asmadacharya Paryantam Vande Guru Paramparam Ishvaro Guratmeti Mochi Veda Vibhagine Vyomabda Vyapta Dehaya Dakshinamurtaye Namaha Sava Vedanta Siddhanta Gocharam Tamagocharam Govindam Paramanantam Satguru Pranachoshmaham Om Shanti 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 Om Namaste and welcome to our Q&A Thursday morning and afternoon class. Morning for some, afternoon for others. Yeah. So we are a small group today. We will begin with Dave's question. He says that is all suffering them. So we have been looking into the nature of meteor as that which it is just apparently real, you know. And the point to be made is that although it is an appearance in consciousness, it's a superimposition in consciousness, a projection within the scope of consciousness. So it's still, it indeed is experienced and experienced by them, by whom? By all jivas. Every jiva experiences this apparent order of reality, so we cannot deny it, okay? So therefore, we have to concede a certain degree of reality to meteor, and we say it is an apparent order of reality. Of course, some Upanishads goes to the extreme to say that this appearance is as good as non-existent, although it exists. Why? Because we do experience it. So the jivas experience, and why the jiva experience meteor? Because jivas are an integral part of meteor. Meteor is held by these three principles: Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat. So Jiva exists in meteor, therefore it does experience meteor. So this order of reality to the Jiva is as real as the dream state is for the dreamer. You understand? Why? Because they belong to the same dimension, the same order. So the dreamer belongs to the same suborder of reality called the dream world. Understand? So as well, the waker, the Vishwa, it believes it belongs to the same order of reality called Mitya, in which it experiences Ishwara and Jagata, or Jagat as Ishwara, if it develops this religious, spiritual view of this manifestation. So the Jiva does experience Mitya. But how we experience Mitya if Mitya is not real? We do experience it because the Jiva itself is not real as a Jiva. You understand? So in this not real apparent order of reality, we must have a not real apparent Jiva in order to experience the apparent Jagat, not real apparent Jagat. We are talking about Mitya. Everything here has to belong to Mitya. Okay? So as consciousness, we don't experience anything in Mitya. Or in other words, consciousness needs a Jiva in order to experience Mitya, which is this superimposition imposed by Maya within consciousness. You understand? So this is just to open up this first sentence, because Dave comes saying like, if all suffering experienced in the world by all jivas are not really real. Why? Because the world is not real, experience are not really real. Why? Because experience is just another object. Is the most primordial object is experience itself. You know, something that appears to the jiva, appears to consciousness as jivas. You know, and then we have objects, experience you know, appearing as object, something other than the subject. You understand? That which can be objectified, experienced, known, perceived, etc. So we have all suffering is but appearance. They are objects. They are apparently real. Therefore, they are just apparent suffering. So what is Dave going with it? I did not read his entire question, but it's questioning like, I mean, if it may be going that way, if it is a apparent suffering, so why to bother? Why bother? Right? So if suffering is just not real, if suffering is just apparent suffering, why to bother about that? You know, I want to bother about reality, right? So, but the jiva is again another appearance. The jiva is not real, and he belongs to this appearance, this dualistic order of reality in which experience takes place. For experience to take place, we need to the subject jiva and the other objects appearing within the mind of the jiva. This is what defines experience. Experience is not real. The jiva was designed to experience this fundamental duality, the subject jiva and the object's appearance to the jiva. So this is not real. The jiva is not real. This object, this most primordial object of experience called experience itself, not a specific experience, but experience in general, you know. So this is not real. So now we have a situation, a jiva that's not real, experiencing the world which is not real, and unfortunately the jiva, this apparent entity which is not real, apparently experience suffering. But as it experiences suffering, it hurts. You understand? It's not real, but it hurts. It belongs to Mithya. Let me get roots in here. It's not really real, but it is experienced. And there are two ways every experience from the standpoint of the experiencing entity called the jiva can be dealt in two different ways. One is actually three. Okay. One is, oh, I love it and I want more, better, and more intense and a little different all the time because otherwise I get bored. So more, better, and different because I love it. So we develop our likes to certain experience and we develop our dislikes to certain other experience. Some experience that we don't like because they are not really conform to our vasanas. So now we have two kinds of experience of, oh, I like, I enjoy it, yummy, yum, 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 you know, and the other is like adversity and pain and suffering because I don't like it, you know, I have been there, I have been close to this situation in the past, and I do not appreciate it. It produces discomfort, fear, and panic and anxiety, and I don't want that kind of experience. So we have two kinds of experience. So now, in order to, and there is a third different way of experiencing anything in Mithya through the jivas, is the experience of equanimity or positive indifference. You know, when you are just equanimity in reference to certain experience, you know, you say, okay, now I experience pleasure, I experience pain, and I experience indifference to certain object of experience, you know. So the yang in general, it develops this equanimity due to this understanding of the nature of objects as value neutral. So in the way that he does not experience as most samsaris, you know, ragas and dveshas all the time, you know, likes and dislikes, desires and aversion. He does not experience that as much. So now we have the jiva, the entity experiencing the world. The jiva is not real, the world is not real. And as he experienced the world, he experienced three kinds of feelings or subjective the subject aspect of the experience and how the jiva feels about that object of experience. He feels like, oh, I love it and I appreciate it, or I hate it and it brings not joy but discomfort or indifference. Okay, so now the jiva, as long as the jiva is operates by total spiritual ignorance in respect to the true nature of Mithya and the true nature of everything in Mithya as Satya, when he experienced it all from this platform of total spiritual ignorance, what happens to the jiva, David? The jiva suffers its experience because he experienced Mithya, believing that Mithya is real, and the experience in Mithya served the purpose to complete myself. So he's going to be frustrated all the time because nothing is going to really satisfy the jiva. You understand? Even when some karma, some prarabdha karma, some circumstances are favorable to one's vasanas, it's just a fleeting moment of satisfaction that begins fading right away. You understand? So the jiva, as long as the jiva is operated by this spiritual, universal, cosmic ignorance called avidya, it experiences suffering, discomfort, anxiety, affliction, fear, desires, stress, depression. So all of this is due to the nature of experience under the veil of ignorance, under the spell of ignorance, Maya, avidya, okay? So now, this jiva, once it develops karmic merit, he naturally he's pulled to this scriptural knowledge, and then he starts submitting its mind, and then he starts developing this spiritual knowledge revealed by Ishvara, complete knowledge, Satya and Mithya. And then he starts living in the world and developing this sense of resistance against ragas and diversions, resistance against pleasures and pains. You understand? And the sense of balance, equilibrium, and equanimity in regards to what the field presents as experience. So, and then this is the other option. You are no longer subject to ragas and diversions, but you are now being operated by the spiritual knowledge, and you experience equanimity. You're just you have your own balance. You are not subject to ups and downs that the field of experience propitiates us moment from moment to moment. You understand? So I'm going around the subject without reading your entire question, but to explain that the jiva is not real. He experienced suffering. Suffering is not real, but yet it does not feel good to suffer. You understand? So it's not real because nothing here is real, but it is experienced by the jivas. And since we are here, and since our karma brought us here, we are bound to experience the world. It's better to be educated in the scriptures so that we can enjoy this experience rather than suffer the experience called the world. Understand? We either enjoy or we suffer, and even on another level, we enjoy in a very cool way with this sense of equanimity. Everything is all right, all is good. It's good when it's good. It's good when it's really not good, as Ramji likes to say. This is another level. I mean, this spiritual knowledge gives us the possibility of living a life from that platform of knowledge in which we are kind of immune, to the circumstance, the situations that the field of experience presents to us from moment to moment. Now, yes, it feels so real, immediate, and demands attention for the jiva. Yeah, so it is an apparent suffering. The world feels real, and immediately, especially suffering, demands attention from the jiva. Have we noticed that when we suffer our experience, is when usually is when we pay more attention and we begin connecting the dots, and we begin somehow, you know, redirecting our understanding, our life, you know, and begin understanding better the connection between my thoughts and actions and what life presents to us as our karmas. So when life is a little painful and more painful and more painful, we need to revise what we have been doing and begin to implement change, you know, psychological, emotional, intellectual change. So because the first step is to become enjoyer, punya, you understand? I want to be enjoyer. No? I want to enjoy this opportunity. I want to develop a peaceful mind so that I can transcend pleasure and pain. Yeah? So when it's suffering, it demands attention from the jiva, definitely. When it's enjoyable, it does also, the jiva gets hooked up, hooked up, hooked up. But when it's painful, is usually when we really feel like, okay, it's not working for me. Samsara is giving me a lot of trouble. There is something here that's not working. I have tried my best to attract only punya, but there is a lot of papa coming with every punya. So there must be some other solution. Therefore, I'm going to look around until I find something that makes sense. That's when our karmas begin directing us to the scriptures of the Upanishads. And then Dave says, is self-actualization then applying the lens of Vedanta to the suffering? Realize it does not impact the self, only the jiva. So this human experiential element called psychological suffering, it's meant to dissipate as self-knowledge becomes more and more actualized. So if we have self-realization, but we keep experiencing psychological suffering, it means that the self-knowledge was not properly digested, processed, internalized, integrated to the extent that my life can be transformed. Because after all, self-knowledge is the benefit of self-knowledge is the removal of this suffering, psychological suffering, which is inherent to human experience, the human condition. Huh? So Dave asks, is self-actualization then applying the lens of Vedanta to the suffering? Yes. So every time we are suffering, we should know that we are being operated by ignorance. This universal ignorance is operating our intellect, and then the way we see the world, the way we respond to the world is going to produce suffering. So suffering is a red flag, you understand? So when suffering is happening, we must be sure that I need to go back to my scriptures, you know, and do my spiritual work so that I can see things from the eyes of wisdom, the eyes of Vedanta, you know, the lens of Vedanta. I want to see the world and understand my experience, you know, through the eyes of wisdom presented by the scriptures.
Would you say that, like, that if suffering is a sign, if I'm suffering, all right, especially something, you know, a papa, you know, type of suffering, if I dislike it, and I'm in, is that evidence, or is that an indicator that I'm identifying with the body and mind? And if I can really practice detaching from the body and mind, then it doesn't eliminate the suffering, but it gives me at least a chance to move towards equanimity, as you talk about it.
Yeah. Well, practice what? What did you say? Practice intention?
Well, so if I identify that the suffering is because I'm identifying with the body and mind, then am I able to, then it was the next step then to really think about, well, how do I detach from the body and mind, and focus on the and see the suffering from the self perspective. Well, it doesn't eliminate the suffering, but it helps me at least move towards equanimity, is what I'm
Yeah,
thinking.
yeah, definitely. So what happens is that as long as we identified with our vasanas, which are nothing but our likes and dislikes, what I would like to experience and what I do not want to experience, we identify with our vasanas, with our causal body, or our likes and dislikes, they sit there, they are deposited there. As long as we are really, totally identified with our likes and dislikes, we're gonna suffer. Why? Because life does not care about our likes and dislikes. You understand? It just presents to ourselves our prarabdha karma, moment from moment to moment, according to its laws regulating meteor. You understand? So as long as we are really still being operated by these ignorant vasanas that says that the objects of experience are real, they are the source of joy and happiness and security, and I need to get what I want, when I want, the way I want, you understand? And avoid what I don't want, the way I don't want. As long as we are totally governed by our likes and dislikes, we're going to suffer, because the life cannot be manageable, cannot be controlled. The field cannot be controlled. It belongs to Ishvara, the system, okay? The cause and effect, the karmic, ethic, psychological laws governing Ishvara, and then especially the karmic laws. So we have no control. We suffer because we identified with our likes and dislikes. So now, every time we are suffering, David, you have to understand that, I was not suffering because things were somehow going my way, but now it's not going my way, I'm suffering, okay? And then the only thing to do is to go back to this spiritual knowledge and again submit our minds to this body of knowledge until this knowledge becomes firm and present and alive in our minds, so that it becomes like a shield protecting ourselves from this ignorance that's going to keep popping up from the causal body. Vasanas, they are deposited there, they are going to show up. In the moment we interact with the field, the vasanas are going there suggesting good, great ideas that, if they are based on ignorance of the true nature, the spiritual ignorance, as lately I like to put, we're going to suffer, okay? So we need to understand that every time we are suffering because we are not getting what we want. You understand? And then we say, ignorance again is operating here. And the only way is to bring forth this knowledge in my mind, if I have it properly printed in my mind, and then immediately correct my thinking process, correct, my attitude towards life again and again. That's why I often say this knowledge has to become alive in our minds. If it's not alive, what we need to do, Dave, we need to run back to the books, to the audios, and to the videos, and again keep reinforcing this spiritual Vedantic Vasana until it is hard and fast and alive in our minds. You understand? So ready to protect ourselves as a shield. Okay? So that's what we say. This self-knowledge is the greatest shield. Otherwise, we are just operated by vasanas. What else you were going to say, David? I don't know if I covered your last commentary.
I think you have covered it and gone beyond. I mean, it's really interesting. And when you talk about returning to the Vedas, returning back because we're suffering from ignorance, that's, to me, is going back to the focus on discernment again, and discerning between what is real and unreal. So it's one of the the 4 Ds,
Yeah.
and we're going back to discernment or detachment. So you talked about indifference and feeling indifference towards something, and there's something to me about indifference that sounds like I don't care. All right, it sounds very cold and callous. And but when I talk about discerning between or detaching from something, so I can love something to death. I can love my son to death. I can love my son more than anything, but I can also detach from my son, knowing that knowing that it's all temporary, and
Yeah,
so I can love and detach, but I don't think I can love and be indifferent. Do you
yeah,
see what I'm saying? And
yeah.
so
Eh,
it's word choices perhaps a little bit here. That's so I'm thinking out loud. That's all.
yeah, it's better. It's better you integrate more and more of the Vedantic language, okay, and gradually and try to understand the meaning of these Vedantic words. Okay, when we talk about dispassion, we are talking about positive indifference. We are talk about discernment, about discrimination. We talk about equanimity. Okay, so people confuse true love and compassion with emotional love. You understand, which is mostly based on attachment. Okay, so when we say about dispassion or indifference, equanimity is indifference, I always like to add this word called positive indifference, because otherwise it may give people the impression that it is, I don't give a damn. Okay, no. You care for your family, you care for your son, you care for your house, you care for your body, you care for your mind, but you are not emotionally attached and depend on having things your way in respect to, in relationship to all these other objects, other factors. You understand? So you know that you have no control. Okay. So your son is going to do what he does. You love him. Okay. You love him, but you know that Ishwara is going to present his karma and he's going to respond about to whatsoever Ishwara presents him from his vasanas, which was provided by Ishwara, the system. From naturally, your son is also part, integral part of this system. Yeah? Vasanas, actions, and results of action. So, but you see everything from the standpoint of this, from the angle of this spiritual knowledge, which is not only about everything is mithya and the only thing is that, but it's also about the knowledge, understand of mithya and all its laws governing the human experience, transaction, interaction here. So this knowledge is going to develop into this passion, a sense of equanimity, in a way that even if your son does the most stupid, makes the most stupid decision that brings a lot of suffering in his life, you're going to keep watching and say, oh, he's going to get in trouble and there is nothing I can do about that. And none of this is going to affect me because I know that it all belongs to Ishwara, and nobody has control. And moreover, my son is not my son; he's the son of God. We're all son of God. No, we are not in Christianity here that we believe that only Jesus is son of God. No, we know that we're all sons and daughters of Ishwara. So all this knowledge is going to allow us to develop this this sense of equanimity in respect to our parabda karmas, our circumstance, and the people around us are also our parabda karmas, our circumstance of life. So you use some terms like discernment and what was the other word?
Detachment, perhaps.
No, discernment and another word that I want to bring to your attention, that you have to watch out on those definitions because you have been doing your inner work and you are trying to look at things from the standpoint of discernment. Discernment is discerning among anything. You can discern among the objects of experience from different angles. So
Yeah.
discern according to your vasanas, you can discern based on dharma, you can discern based on the discrimination between reality, satya, and mithya. We can discern from any kind of angle. So this is all part of this spiritual work that we do, to the degree that, to the extent that our intellect becomes wiser and more purified, more refined, and it develops a better way of reading the stimulus coming from the field, and develops also the ability to respond more appropriately and adequately. So this brings about more punya, more punya, more favorable circumstance. So this is part of what we call discernment, which is a purified or a more subtle and refined intellect. Understand? So, but I don't remember the other word that you said that has raised this red flag on my mind to tell you that
maybe equanimity.
To follow those words. Oh, somebody said something?
Maybe equanimity.
No. It was something else. Thank you, Claudia.
Indifference? When he said indifference.
Indifference? Yeah, no. He was
talked about saying positive difference.
Yeah, he was saying something else that that I want to call his attention to understand better the meaning of what he was trying to say. The meaning, but it's going to come back because it's not the first time he brings up that word. It's repertory of words to bring about his understanding. So let me get you on here. Is self-actualization then applying Vedanta to the suffering? Yes, until self-actualization is so actualized that we don't need again and again to apply this knowledge to offset suffering. You understand?
Yeah.
So not that the suffering is completely erased, but it comes to a point that one does not care anymore when circumstances bring about suffering or when circumstances bring about punya, you understand? So this grows gradually so that we don't really need to apply vigilantly, diligently as a sadhana, But before we get to that, we need to again and again use use it as a sadhana. We use it as a spiritual effort, to fight this universal ignorance of vidya.
Yeah.
So self-actualization is when this suffering is mostly gone from the life of the individual. And then you say something that I want to cover a little bit. Realizing the self does not impact the self, only the jiva. What do you mean by that?
I think what I mean is like when you fully realized that you understand that what's happening in mithya is only happening to the jiva, it's not happening to the self.
Yeah.
And so the self itself, the self doesn't experience. It's not. What was something that you said? I thought about it a lot last night. It was something along the lines of the universal or God is part of everything, but everything is not part of God.
Right.
And so I was kind of thinking of, I was thinking about it in terms of that. That was just a really interesting way of thinking about it, because I've always thought about the Son of God, like you talked about that, and so I'm the Son of God, so I'm part of God, but then that means I'm also God is part of me. But this is kind of saying is that the wave exists, it's part of the ocean, but the ocean is not part of the wave.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so I just think it's an interesting distinction to reflect upon.
Yeah.
And but is that related to what you were asking?
Let me take a look at it.
That's good, but that's kind of what, that was kind of, as I was listening to the talk from Monday last night, that's what was going through my head. It was kind of, it was sitting there thinking about that, that perspective and where am I sitting and how am I looking at these things? And am I looking at it from a body-mind perspective, or am I looking at things from, from a self perspective?
Yeah.
And how to, where do I identify with? And so,
Yeah.
so that's, but yeah.
As we have already determined, so the self is not an agent or experiencing entity. The self does not experience.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It does not experience. It's just this conscious existence in which experience takes place wherever Ishvara, Jiva, and Jagat are placed within this consciousness, within the self. Understand? So it's not an experienced entity. Okay, so the question here is like any one of these experience of suffering or pleasure, does it impact the self? It does not. Only the jiva. Yes, only the jiva. So the jiva experience other objects. Okay, so now the jiva, once he understands that his true nature is the self, and the self is not subject to pleasures and pains, is not subject to punya and papa, it's not subject to karma and its laws, it's free and independent. In fact, it's the only reality in which this mithya reality was superimposed. Once that understanding is firm and clear, and then what happens to the jiva? It continues to experience to the world. So it means to say, the world is going to be happening to the jiva the same way before, okay? So suffering, punya and papa is going to be happening to the jiva, in this case to the yani, the same way that it happens to the anyani. So what is the difference now? The difference that this yani knows that his true nature is consciousness and only consciousness. So this knowledge somehow it leaks into the jiva's personality in a way that the jiva's personality develops an immunity or a resistance, against the papas and punyas. You understand? As pleasures and pains of life. Why? Because in the intellect of the jiva, there is a thought now that say, Aham Brahmasmi, and I will say, I know that nothing here is going to affect my true nature. I mean, this vasana, this thought, this declaration of the Upanishad is so firm, has become so factual in the mind of the yani that it serves as a shield. It serves as a vaccination against punya and papa, against pleasure and pains, So it's like a airbag that somehow it softens, it impacts punya and papa. You understand? So that's all there is. So the yani is the one who knows that the world is going to keep throwing its parabhata karma to him, but because of his knowledge about his true nature is satya, all the events of mithya do not impact his personality, his mental, emotional, intellectual personality as before, because he knows that my true nature is satya, and everything that's happening here is not affecting my true nature. It affects my mind, my intellect, my physical body, affect my family members, but does not affect me and does not affect the true nature of everyone. And then one can really be more at peace. If you see your son suffering a lot, you be at peace. You say, okay, it's all Mont Parabhata Karma. Moreover, he is consciousness and he is not being affected by it. And one day he will know that. You understand? So realizing the self does not impact the self, only the jiva, body, mind, yes. The suffering does not disappear. It becomes more a meta perspective. The suffering does not disappear, and it does disappear because once the suffering comes, if you identify with the suffering, and then you're in trouble. You understand? If you identify as the jiva, the sufferer of an experience, and then you're in trouble. But if your identity, especially in such a moment, shifts from the body mind to the self, and they'll say, okay, this is going to impact my jiva, but does not impact me. You understand? So the suffering may even appear. You understand? And we need to make a distinction here between adversities and pain, emotional pain, psychological pain, and physical pain is not synonymous of suffering. Suffering is when you are really resisting the pains, the parabdha karma, the adversity that life presents us. If we really resist it, and then we experience psychological suffering. You understand? So psychological suffering is going to continue appearing to a certain degree. Pains of life, adversities, you understand? Papas, adverse parabdha karmas, they are going to continue coming. So, but this psychological suffering, which is a byproduct of identification with my likes and dislikes and resistance to what it is. So this element gradually dissipates as this spiritual knowledge is harder and faster, and alive in one's intellect. You understand, Dave?
Okay. Well, I think with that approach, what just occurs to me is like the benefit of Vedanta to the jiva is that you can look at a negative situation, and you can at least develop indifference, or at least a positive side to the whole thing, and you can realize that, so that this jiva becomes more calm and more peaceful. And in this life, I mean, it's something that can happen. That can help you today, tomorrow, the next day, in terms of dealing with everyday life.
That's why we're getting back together every week, because we see already the benefits of these studs, this Shravana, Manana, Nididhyasana.
Yeah, we have, I have to see the benefits now. I can't just invest in, so that, my next life is better or something.
Yeah.
It's like, how do I make this life better? And so when you talked about, creating a calm and peaceful mind, creating an environment to allow more of the knowledge to appear and for ignorance to go away, it really becomes, a repetition of that. So, okay, well, thank you. Anybody else have questions or comments to add, or?
I guess one thing I wanted to bring up, Orlando, is as far as the suffering, I had to put my dear dog down recently, and I can hardly talk about it without crying, but that's the pain of loss of this friend of mine for 13 years. It's hard to remove yourself and look at that, a death with detachment,
So that's why in Vedanta we say, do not attach yourself to objects. Do not attach yourself to other jivas. Do not attach yourself to things. Attach your mind to that which is eternal, that which is beginningless and endless. Attach yourself to that's real, the self, your true nature. You understand? That's why we need to move our mind from these attachments to the world and attach it to that which is the only reality, and it is eternal. You understand? It does not come and go. So we get attached to objects, we get in trouble. Papaji used to say, attach yourself to anything that changes, and it's going to bite you in the head. It's a very nice statement. I never forgot it. You understand? It's going to bite, because everything that changes is temporal, and it's subject to death. So if we get attached to our physical body, we're going to suffer like hell when our time approaches. You understand? So if we attach to our spouse or to our kids, to our dog, to our cats, we're going to suffer because all these objects, they change and they are subject to time. They come and go. So again and again, all these moments of suffering, it's just another red flag to us to understand that, I have made my happiness dependable on this other object called my dog that was around me for 13 years. I even developed the idea that it was my dog. I forgot that it was Schwarter's dog, that he gets this dog to me. And then I could share my life for a period of time with this dog, and the dog went. You understand? So a healthy way to live in this world is not developing attachments, but this passion, positive, acceptance, positive, indifference in regards to the nature of every object, which is temporality. Everything is bound by time here. And we need to accept these natural laws, with wisdom. No? Otherwise we suffer like hell. Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we need to take our lessons from these moments, from these events of life, because we are here for freedom from all sorts of attachment. That's what moksha means. That's what's freedom. No rebirth means, It's okay. I mean, I'm no longer dependent on anything here for my satisfaction, I'm totally dependent on the self. And what happens when you say I'm totally dependent on the self and you understand that you are the self? It means that you are free, meaning to say you are independent, because you are the only thing there is, which is the self-consciousness, you understand? So we need to develop this sense of freedom, moksha, and that requires great dispassion, which is nothing but detaching. The intellect, the mind has to detach from all objects. When we attach, it means to say, I depend on these and these and these and these objects for my sense of peace, contentment, security, and self-love, and equilibrium, balance, and satisfaction. So we don't like to be dependent because our nature is freedom, is independence. But we need to go back and reestablish our true nature identity as this free, independent, conscious self we are, conscious awareness we are. Right? So now you can talk about your dog without crying anymore. You just say, oh, my dog not only was a great companion to me, but taught me a great lesson, because his time came and then he revealed to me that I was attached to another object of media. And now I'm going to be more careful with my attachments, and I'm going to, accelerate this process of detaching and attaching, and detach from the objects and attach to the self. Of course, we can never really attach to the self because we are not separate from the self, because we are the self. So, but we're going to attach our minds to the scriptures, the Upanishadic scriptures that reveal to individual that Jivatma is Paramatma, right? Attaching to the self means to say attaching to the scriptural knowledge that reveals to me that I am already the self. I have never been not self, you understand? Because my nature is consciousness, not the mind. Mind is energy, is an object. My nature is consciousness, which is the spirit of everything. Understand?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So now you can take your dog.
It's a hard one. More practice.
I mean, what was this dog really providing you with, Gary? I mean, you believe that that dog was meaning too much for you because you believe that he was providing much to you. But you know, the dog was not really providing the happiness and security and satisfaction that you imagine it was producing. You have project those values in that dog, you understand? The dog was just another dog like any other dog, but you have project, oh, this is a beautiful dog, and it's something that makes me so happy and secure and satisfied, and you know, it was all,
Companionship, yeah.
you know,
Companionship, you know.
yeah, companionship. It suppressed my sense of loneliness and so on. You know, it's all subjective. It's all projection. Vedanta is about pulling from all these projections, you know, and realizing on a deeper level. This is Mithya knowledge. You know, realize that all objects are value neutral. I project. I superimpose value objects. You understand? So now, if you want to have another dog, you have another dog. But know that you're going to superimpose value to this new dog, and then and there you're going to see, you know, this dog is a source of this and that and so on. But be more careful in the sense of not be blindly, you know, veiled by this notion that the dog really possesses real intrinsic value in itself. You know, it's all beautiful, it's all God's creation, it's all Jivas, shining with life and so on. But that's all, and they belong to Ishvara. And they are not going to give us anything. The only thing that can give us this satisfaction that we are seeking for is self-knowledge, understand? The understand our true nature is purna, fullness, satisfaction. Okay?
Yeah, thank you.
I have another question. It's somewhat related.
Yeah.
Well, I said something to somebody the other day that they wanted to know what kind of yoga classes I was taking, and I said Vedanta, and they said, "Oh, you mean Advaita Vedanta?" And so my thinking was, it's like, why do I have to, or why is Advaita associated with Vedanta? Why isn't Vedanta good enough? Why is there Advaita Vedanta that, to me, is just another word for saying the same thing?
Yeah.
So could you talk to that a little bit?
Yeah, the reason is because with time, Vedanta, which means the Vedanta, the end of the Vedas, which is nothing but the Upanishads and the Brahma Sutras, and they were poisoned by dualistic ideas, and people start calling other spiritual circles as Dvaita Vedanta. Other people start, you know, somehow distorting or how you say another word, contaminating these Upanishadic teachings, okay? And then they start saying that, no, I mean, it's Vedanta is good, we like Shankara, but our interpretation of what the Upanishad says, what Shankara says, is that the nature of reality is duality. You understand? And then they call themselves Dvaita Vedantas. Dvaita Vedantas exist. You understand? And then Vedanta has to come back. No, the nature of reality, according to the Upanishads, the proper interpretation is that the nature of reality is non-duality. You understand? All there is the self. And the self, Satya, is the only reality. And the dualists say, yes, we accept that the self is reality. But we also believe that the world is real. You understand? Why? Because God is real for us and we don't want to discard God as not real. So they are fixated with the idea that God, the creator, is also real. And therefore the world must be real. You understand? But they like several other aspects of the Upanishads. And then they develop this Dvaita Vedanta, dualistic Vedanta. And then later on, people come and say, no, I do the Advaita Vedanta, no dual Vedanta. You understand? So it's all due to this divergence to the tradition, original tradition. These diversions occur in different kind of spiritual circles, philosophies develop. You understand?
When you say those two words, they sound the same to me. So I don't know if you just you kind of said it sounded like I bought twice. I mean, I'm not sure what the difference is in terms of people describing Vedanta. Are there two different words that describe Vedanta, the
Yeah.
dualist and the non-dualist?
Yeah, Dvaita is dualistic, and Advaita is non-dualist. Okay, so Vedanta,
Dvaita. Okay.
Dvaita and Advaita. Advaita means no division, no dual,
Yeah.
one reality. And then the dualist says that consciousness is real, but matter is also real, because God who created this universe is real for them. You understand? And they have profound and sophisticated arguments, but they are all debanked by our swamis over the millenniums. Proving in the Brahma Sutras are mostly about that. It's eternal discussion of Dharma combat between the dualists and the non-dualists. The dualists say that Satya is real and Mithya is also real, and the tradition says that no, the nature of reality is non-duality. The only reality is consciousness, and everything is just an appearance, a superimposition, a projection. And people have a hard time to digest this notion of Mithya and put up with Maya, because nothing can exist out of nothing. And consciousness does not do anything. And then we, the Advaitas, we from the Upanishads, we present the notion that this manifestation of this apparent reality is due to Maya. And the dualists do not like to contemplate the idea of something may exist which is beyond the intellectual understanding, but it's due to Maya that this universe, which is not real, has shown up, has appeared. So they don't like. They call us the Maya, the Mayacists or something like that. The people who are into these notions of Maya. But this is what the scriptures, the Upanishads, originally present as the ultimate reality. There is only one reality, and this reality is Satchitananda, is consciousness, existence. Okay, and everything is just not real. So you can do some research, David, if you feel inclined. There are, right now, right these days, we have one guy in our groups in Portuguese language that he has so much spiritual knowledge, but it's all academic, informative. And he has been with us since a few months, and he's becoming a problem because he started bringing this other school of thoughts, and then lately he said, no, I'm not part of this group, I'm not part of this sampradaya, but I see value, I want to participate, but I want to bring all these other notions. And it's disturbing the environment, because the guy is just a scholar. He has a huge knowledge. He memorizes scriptures, and they start bringing. And I keep pointing out to him that this informative academic knowledge is not helping him, because he even gets excited because he wants to show up too much his academic knowledge. And I like the guy because he brings so many nice, and he's extremely intelligent. you know. But he's becoming a problem because he is not convinced of our sampradaya as valid and truthful. You know, he keeps questioning basic concepts, you know, within sampradaya because he picked up from so many different schools, and he keeps comparing. You know?
Trying to reconcile, yeah. He's
Yeah.
trying to reconcile and yeah,
And then it's
like
much more difficult. It's much more difficult. If you
yeah.
take
Well,
that road, the academic road as a scholar, you're never
and,
going to find satisfaction because Vedanta is not about Vedanta, it's about us understanding nature, you know.
and well, that's what Shraddha really helped me
Yeah,
with that,
yeah,
is that it's okay to accept Advaita Vedanta, the non-dualistic, but do it with inquiry.
yeah.
And so okay, well, thank you. I'll pursue that on my own if I need to. So
Okay,
thanks.
good, good. So anything else, my friends?
Yes, if it is possible, a little question always about that topic. How can be, this is maybe a silly question, I don't know, but how can be, because me too, I investigated a little bit and I discovered this, that there are different versions of Vedanta, and how can be sure that the non-dual version is the true version? Only through experience, maybe, or
If you if you want that answer to be, that question to be answered, you need to become a scholar and begin to project your mind to all these different schools, the dualistics and the non-dualists. You have to, and then because now you want to compare schools, compare, you know, and then it's a long road, the road of the scholars, the road of the pandits, you know. Like, oh no, I want to be sure. So other people that, in order to be satisfied intellectually, they require a lot of work, you know. So if that's your case, so I say go and start studying at the school. But what counts is not how much you know about schools of thoughts or philosophies or spiritual schools, is what works and what does not work. You understand?
yeah.
So if you feel that Vedanta is working for you, it becomes a huge distraction to stop this process that you began 6 months ago or a year ago, to start exploring other school thoughts in order to be sure, because nobody is ever sure about it. Nobody has ever found a 100% sure answer to this question. You understand? Because you are looking at things from the academic standpoint. It's philosophy, you know. It's one argument against another. But we have to remember that our Mahatmas, our Shankaracharya, you know, they have been through age doing this sort of Dharma combat with the dualists, you know, to the extent that they prove to the dualists that this very notion that reality is duality is absurd. And we have been going through some of these logics through the Viveka Shuddhamani here and there, you understand? So if that logic does not really satisfy your intellect, and then dig in and looking a little bit deeper in between this beginningless discussion between the dualists and the non-dualists, and the consequence of believing that reality is duality, okay? So it's better you just don't not go there too deeply into those philosophical discussions, unless you are meant to, because that is your inclination. You understand? If you're not going to be satisfied with Vedanta as it has been presented to you from our Sampradaya, beginning with Shankaracharya and then coming all the way to Mayananda, Dayananda, Ramji, you know, and I myself doing my contribution. If you are not really getting benefits and satisfied, and then you have to do those things. But it's it's counterproductive. How you say?
Controproducente.
Counterproductive.
Counterproductive, because you're gonna begin taking the road of a scholar, you know, comparing.
Yeah, no, for me, I can say that for me, I have total satisfaction now with Vedanta. But of course, we have a lot of information today. So I read some of these notions. I think to a certain extent, it's useful to know, because you have to have a little bit of information is good. But at the same time, I ask me this question because I started 1 year ago, 1 year and a half, something like this. And of course, I have not yet this complete understanding. I'm satisfied, really satisfied now, but I'm not this complete understanding. So I ask myself, okay, how can I know? But with your answer now, it's clear, because yes, it's not useful. It's work for me. The important thing is that it works for me.
Yeah,
so I don't have to lose my energy now. Maybe in the future, if I want to have more information, so maybe when this knowledge becomes firm in me, maybe in the future it's good to have more knowledge about this.
Yeah, probably not, because self-knowledge is the knowledge that puts an end to the need for more knowledge. That's one of the definitions of self-knowledge.
Yeah, also, I don't think about that.
What usually happens, for example, I could, if it was my nature, if it was my dharma, I could be studying other schools of sorts, so that I could do some dharma combats with different people, because this guy I just mentioned, many others have come in the past 5-6 years in the Vedanta Brazil group. You understand? But I make it very clear in our group that I don't do dharma combat. This Vedanta Brazil is a platform in which there is a teacher, and that unfolds the teaching to the best of its ability. And the teaching works for most people. If you find value, you have to begin this relationship, which is the base of our tradition, parampara, student and teacher, you know. And then you keep learning, and we keep cleaning doubts, you keep presenting your understanding, just the same way. But if you want Dharma combat, you have to go elsewhere. Why? I don't have all the knowledge of just different schools, you understand? And I don't have the time to educate myself in a way that I can, you know, I can really go deep into the Brahma Sutras. And I mean, if you want to do a Dharma combat, you go and engage someone like maybe Swami Paramarthananda or Ramji. They have more knowledge, you know. Swami Paramarthananda, Swami, other Swamis, they have more knowledge about other schools as well, you know, of sort. The important is, I mean, we are here to just understand our true nature, and Vedanta works because we know that it's improving our lives. And so we keep doing this work because, as I said, Vedanta is not about Vedanta. It's not about the philosophy. It's about ourselves realizing our freedom as consciousness rather than our slavery as a body-mind construct. No, that's all there is to self-knowledge, to Vedanta. Right?
Thank you. This is very clear. Thank you.
Good. Okay.
Okay.
Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamada Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Shankara, Ramji, Dayananda, and the entire Sampradaya. Thank you, all. And we meet you again next Monday. Okay? Much love.
Thank you. Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Ciao. Ciao.
Thank you, Arlinda.
Thank you all.
You too.
Much love. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Ciao, ciao.